She is like a star, a young star at this facility. Greetings, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers, and today we'll take a look at a few films, amongst which City of Angels, starring Nicolas Cage, Meg Ryan, and Dennis Franz. This is a film which is a rather slowly paced romantic film. The film really doesn't add up in my mind. The storyline is something like this. A plethora of angels, whether angels of death or just greeting angels, so to speak, are seen on Earth, and amongst these is Nicolas Cage. All these angels are black-clad. This particular angel is kind of struck with the idea or the question, exactly what do humans feel? And trying to learn about this, he is brought to that question, that Hamlet-esque question, to be or not to be. He meets a fallen angel and learns that crossover is possible. And because he has fallen in love with Meg Ryan's character, a doctor, a sort of classic situation of falling in love with a doctor, the patient here. But at any rate, he does make the big fall. He does become human. He does wed Meg Ryan. In the film has an O. Henry-esque twist. And Nicolas Cage is left alone to enjoy, however he can, the pleasures offered by life on Earth. This film seems to be making a propaganda plug in favor of Lucifer and the fallen angels in their lifestyle. It seems that the angels are represented by the early Nicolas Cage character could feel no pain. They had no sense of taste, smell, or anything of that sort, yet they could hear music. So they were not completely lost of senses. They seemed to be able to hear the sunset and the sunrise, the music thereof, supposedly. Now, these particular angels, and there are many, we see them all over the place, are depicted as male and female, black, white, and so forth. Now, from a Christian perspective, we would not expect to see sex or race amongst the heavenly. But in this particular film, not only do we see this, but it's not taken as something which one should see, but not see, but actually see, because we have a male character, Nicolas Cage, who is sexually attracted to an earthling female, something that is far more in line with the mystery religions and their a profound interest in sex. Now we see the Meg Ryan character at the outset. She's riding a bicycle in an urban setting. She gets to the hospital. She gets into her gear and whatnot like this. It's only about this time that we learn that she is a brilliant heart surgeon. She has a mentor, superior, a man who also is brilliant, heart surgeon type. They have a relationship of the let's go for a hike or let's go out into the woods and march about and so forth. He has an interest in her of a physical, pragmatic, and fond way, and even asks her to marry him. She's not in love with him, but still toys with the idea. Now, she has lost a patient early in this particular film. Nicolas Cage sees her doing this. He sees tears well in her eyes and spill over, and he seems to be moved by this. This seems also a little bit inconsistent in that it's quite clear that people don't die but just move to a different state in this film. And in fact, these angels are the escorters, so to speak, to that other state. And all the people who die seem to be quite together about their new position. Only those left behind are tearful. Well, we can understand why they are tearful, but we just don't quite see why the angels are tearful or moved by tears. But anyway, we are told that Nicolas Cage's character is. He also seems to be a Hemingway buff. He gives a copy of A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway to Meg Ryan's character. Now, by a force of will, he has been able to make himself visible to her. She doesn't know exactly who he is. Throughout this film, he has this very strange gaze about his eyes. He looks almost cow-like. I think that any woman who had a male gazing at him in this fashion would feel very uncomfortable indeed. But in this particular film, that's not the case, and his gaze is interpreted as compassionate and warm and so forth by Meg Ryan. And this is hard to believe. Meg Ryan, by the way, is the best thing in this particular film, a cute and interesting actress. Now, the willed Cage, the visible Cage, the human-esque Cage, keeps cropping up and seems to be making a mark, so to speak, in the mind, making an impression with Meg Ryan. He talks to her about Hemingway and expresses his love for the way Hemingway always tells you how things taste. He mentions how some episode in which something is explained in terms of the taste of an oyster. But since Nicolas Cage could not taste the thing being described, he could also not taste an oyster either, so that he could not understand possibly what was being said, and this is entirely circular. And likewise, fashion, Meg Ryan is told to explain the taste of a pear, and she does so in terms of sugar and the texture of sand. And Nicolas Cage has no more idea of the taste of sugar than he does of that of a pear, and probably has no notion about texture of sand any more than silk. So therefore, the description is entirely circular and meaningless to him. But we are told that it is nevertheless meaningful. So as I say, things don't seem to add up in this film. Now, she is getting increasingly intrigued and taken with this fellow, and is one of the reasons why I think she turns down the doctor. At some point earlier on, we also meet the Franz character, Now, as a conquering hero type doctor, Meg Ryan's character is treated with great deference by almost everyone but her mentor, the brilliant Sergeant Superior. However, one of the people who does not treat her in this fashion is the Franz character playing a Mr. Messenger. Of course, we all understand that angels are messengers, and therefore his name is very suggestive. When he encounters Nicolas Cage, he immediately recognizes that he is an angel and makes it known to Cage that he, that is, Messenger, once was an angel. So they get to discussing this, and Cage learns that it's possible to become a fallen angel and a human in the process. Asked why he did it, Franz Messenger showed pictures of his wife and children and so forth. The pictures of his wife and so forth don't really suggest an overwhelming impel toward the great fall, nor do plunges in the ocean. So it's not quite easy to see why he took the big drop. He is presently occupied, or has been for about 15 to 20 years, as a steeplejack. He likes high places still, apparently. He can no longer hear the sunset and the sunrise, the music there, but he can barbecue on the grill. Now, he is content, apparently, with the earthly things, but now is getting in a position to croak. He feels no sadness about this. Well, of course, why should he, knowing that he's going to be escorted by the likes of Nicolas Cage or his once self into a new state, and there is no pain or suffering or loss, just a new condition, kind of a reincarnation, as it were. Well, this puts the idea in Nicolas Cage's head, and he finally decides he's going to take the big drop for love of Meg Ryan. So this he does. He does become human. He's overjoyed with the whole deal. He has pain, blood, and so forth like this. He's just, it reminds me a little bit of James Stewart's joy in It's a Good Life. The Cage character does marry Meg Ryan. They go off to her bungalow in the sticks, being doctors and so forth. There's never a problem with money sufficiency. They're having a fine time out there and so forth, but unfortunately there is a bicycle ride which proves fatal, and Meg Ryan dies and is escorted off. Cage runs into one of his old friend angels and says angrily, did you do this? Did you escort her away? No, not me. Well, at any rate, this is the O. Henry-esque spin, and now Cage has to live out his human life alone, away from his love, and will have to make do with swims in the ocean and eating pears and so forth. So there you have it. He comes to terms with to be, and she comes to terms, Meg Ryan, with the not to be. So the question is, go to the movie or not? Well, I thought it was a little silly myself, but it can't hurt. And now another film I'd like to talk about is Tarzan, starring Casper Van Dien, Jane March, and Mr. Waddington as Raven. We last saw Van Dien in the film Starship Troopers. This film, as with most Tarzan films, is fairly regular in its format. In this particular case, the story involves a lost city, a favorite amongst jungle films, whether involving Africa or some other jungle. In fact, in these jungle films, things often seem to be lost. If not a city, it's a mine. If not a mine, it's an individual. But at any rate, the storyline generally is discovering where the lost person or thing is. This is not an exception. Now, the storyline basically is that an English aristocratic family, the Greystokes, in a trip to Africa, crash and perish. Their son survives, a lad reared by the apes, and this tutelage learns everything that there is to know about the jungle. Reaching adulthood, he then decides to go to England to top off his education at Oxford or Cambridge. There he meets the daughter of a British greyback and proposes marriage and is accepted. Just about the day before the marriage, however, he receives a television from an old friend, Mugambi, the shaman chief of a tribe in Africa, in which vision he is informed of peril to Africa, danger, rumble in the jungle, come at once, we need your help. Tarzan knows his duty and tells his wife-to-be that he must postpone the marriage and return to Africa, that he had something important to do there. She is not altogether happy with this situation and puts up something of a fuss, but he goes anyway, resolute in his decision. She eventually decides to follow. She is not a softy, as it turns out, at all, but rather handy with a gun and a knife. She's also pretty handy in the martial arts and has a good deal of brass to her. Now, Tarzan is called there, but you may say, well, what's the problem anyhow? Well, it just seems that there is a group of ruthless white dudes, a gang marauding about, plundering, doing all kinds of villainous things, led by an archaeologist named Raven, a rather flippant name to give the leader of this white band, but at any rate, there you have it. Now, these guys are so depraved that they attack a funeral in process and take the talisman from the neck of the cadaver. It just so happens the talisman has glyphs which indicate the lost city of Ofar, the cradle of civilization, supposedly. Well, Raven sees this. Being an archaeologist, he's able to interpret the glyphs, and he tells everyone, his men, we'll be rich, or perhaps he's saying, I'll be rich, but at any rate, wealth is to be had. They leave the burial crowd looking a little bit forlorn and also a little bit outraged, and go heading immediately toward Ofar. Now, they are about this time confronted by Tarzan. Tarzan has appeared as Greystoke. He has talked to Mugambi. He has gotten some understanding of the situation. It just so happens there's a young fellow in the tribe whose father happened to be the cadaver that had the talisman yanked. And he is very hot-headed and annoyed and so forth, and he really doesn't like any white people at this point in time, including Tarzan. But Tarzan understands that he is feeling a little hot under the collar because of the situation, and also the wise head of Mugambi keeps the two from being in combat. Well, Tarzan also has his bride-to-be at this point in time there, Jane. She incidentally is a little on the prognathous side, and therefore an ideal mate, I would say, for Tarzan. Now, she has heard this, so that he was a little bit threatened with the loss of face, but at any rate, no struggle broke out here. After all, Tarzan is there to help and not to become part of the problem. Well, things commence violently and continue. We have all kinds of little incidences, firefights in the jungle, African Queen-esque ship that is attacked, sunk in a river. We have dips in idyllic ponds with waterfalls by Tarzan and Jane. We have the usual scenes of African animals and so forth. Now this particular Tarzan is on the lean side, a little muscular, but not overly large. Therefore, it really is not so formidable. And actually, the character Raven looks a little bit more formidable. However, this particular Tarzan is, as they say, jungle smart. He can run across the savannas indefatigably. He's good with a bow and arrow, and he has a big knife and whatnot. However, it must be pointed out that the opposing side has dynamite. Still, they can't talk to the animals, and Tarzan can. In fact, we see him riding an African elephant, almost unheard of in these films. They usually have Indian elephants, a little bit more domesticated, used for these purposes. Now, Tarzan, of course, can speak to the elephant, and when he talks to the elephant, it's something like this. Ooh, Well, the elephant understands perfectly what Tarzan is saying, and Tarzan seems to be using a similar language with lions and other beasts of the jungles. I think that they all have a great deal of respect for the African elephant, and probably elephant is something of an international language amongst the beasts. At any rate, they do seem to comprehend. We incidentally have Tarzan with a very nice looking pad in the jungle. He shows it to Jane. She seems a little disappointed perhaps, but Tarzan is there, and she becomes more comfortable, a little bit uncomfortable with the python that lurks, boa constrictor that lurks on the foliage nearby, but otherwise she quickly makes herself at home and even learns to swing on vines. Well, but the main story is stop these guys from getting to Opar. But they're foiled in this because they managed to Shanghai Tarzan's girlfriend, Jane, and head for the Opar. This kind of puts Tarzan in a vulnerable position. He's trailing after. So is the hot-headed young guy of Mugambi's tribe with a cadre of young warriors. After some spelunking and whatnot, they finally stumble upon the lost city. And what a disappointing layout it is. You wonder why anybody would build a city in the location to begin with. It is has a certain Egyptian-esque quality to it. I think that they attempted to make a somewhat of an identification with Egyptian styles here. Plus, we have Mugambi at one point appearing as with a kind of a cobra-esque head capping a crown, sort of Egyptian-esque. It's not sure this is illusion or whether he's alive or whether he's immortal or whether he is showing continuity with the leaders of the past or what. But it's certain that he is an important figure. Most of the interesting aspects of this film involve Mugambi as shaman. This film is unusual in that the special effects that are shown, particularly involving him, are pretty good. We do see at one point Tarzan bitten by what appears to be a yellow cobra, pretty good size one at that, possibly chartreuse, but at any rate, it looks like Tarzan's a goner. at this very important time, lurking nearby and looking very hostile are Raven and his men. They're anxious to put some bullets in Tarzan. But it just so happens that resting by a tree, sending Jane off, he is covered by a bevy of bees, thanks to Mugambi, who somehow from a distance is able to do this. He envisions the problem and through his shaman-esque powers conjures up or brings forth these bees. Well, the qualities of shaman's work, of Mugambi's work, call to mind that of Mandrake, the comic book magician who had an ability to make people see or think they see what they actually do not. Sometimes we think this is what Mugambi is doing, but on the other hand, at other times we're not quite sure, because when these bees leave from off the body of Tarzan, he is healed. So there has to be a little bit something more going on here than illusion. Still, most of the fun in the sense of special effects are involving this shaman Mugambi. Well, it all ends up with the bad guys coming up a cropper and the good guys prevailing, and Africa once more spared from exploitation and plunder, at least temporarily. Jane and Tarzan seem to be happy in their jungle pad, and Mugambi and his tribe are once more at peace, and the lost city of Opar, which they seem to have custodial powers over, is once more a lost city. All in all, a diverting film, wholesome film, in some respects entertaining, in others very conventional.